Okay then, Chris. Let's get into the story. So Chris, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised at Sunderland. Never left. Don't have any particular wish to leave either. Absolutely love the place. Born in Sunderland, raised in a place called Marley Potts, which is on the north side of the river.
Close to those sirens outside.
Working class, working class area. It's a familiar sound. Working class area, but I would describe my upbringing, even though it's in like what some people might think of as a rough part of Sunderland. Me and my sister had a comfortable working class upbringing. I would describe it as. Can't remember a time when we ever wanted for anything. Certainly raised by our parents to be our own people, which we are. But there was never a time, and I knew people who went hungry and struggled for money, and from the look of them, you could tell they were struggling. But from my memory, the childhood I had, me and my friends were kind of got on fine.
So you had a good mix of friends, like from different like backgrounds as well.
Not so much different backgrounds, just different sort of skills in the working class, so to speak. Some people were kind of well-off working class, some people really struggled working class. But certainly in primary school, everybody was kind of in the same boat. Then in secondary school, went to Catholic secondary school, all boys, St Aidan's in Sunderland. Made friends with people who were slightly better off, maybe middle class. I always got along fine with people. Like, it wasn't really a thing like then. It was just, we just rolled around. Certainly in them days, we didn't think of ourselves as working class. I didn't have any kind of idea of what working class was. It was just, we were just kind of us, and I was me, our family was our family, and it was all right.
I think as a kid, you don't really see that kind of stuff, though. It's like class system. You just, I'm from this estate and you're from that estate, because you've all got similar interests, and you just kind of hang around with who you get on with, don't you?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, like, just give us an idea of, like, what your parents do, and is your sister older or younger?
Yeah, my sister's 3 years older than us. She got the brains and the intelligence, or the ability to actually apply herself to education a little bit more than me. My parents, my dad worked for Royal Mail. Was a wagon driver at Royal Mail. He worked there, like, I think it was 37 years. So he was like really like kind of long-term employee of Royal Mail. Was a union rep in his younger days at Royal Mail. So very secure employment, which I guess was reflected in what I was talking about a little bit a couple of minutes ago about having that comfortable background. My mum took time out to raise me and my sister. She went back to work. She was a teaching assistant at a special education needs school. So strangely, I went into Royal Mail when I was 19, parcel force, part of Royal Mail, became a union rep. And then later on, quite recently, actually, I had 4 months as a teaching assistant in a special education needs school. So without really intending it, I became a union rep as well, like my dad. And without really intending it, I kind of followed my parents into what they did. So I was at Royal Mail as well for 26 and a half years. So I had a brilliant time there, being a driver and a union rep there. I'm feeling myself smiling at the thought of that. Like, absolutely loved that job. And then followed my mum. My sister's in the legal profession, so I can't say too much, or she'll tell us off for spilling secrets. But she's got like a full-on career. She's done amazingly well, and extremely proud of her.
So what kind of a house were you raised in as well?
Semi-detached, if that's the question. Semi-detached in Marley Pot, and it was a 3-bedroom house. So we all had our own bedrooms and running water inside toilet, that kind of them kind of luxuries. But again, it was like well-kept house. Me and my sister did chores, and like at the time, sometimes I felt like my parents were like a bit too strict. But I think every kid might think that who has to do some chores. But on reflection, I'm kind of pleased that well, not wanting to speak for my sister, but certainly for me, like I'm pleased I was raised in that way. I'm pleased I had a Catholic education, even though that seemed like a bit of a chore. I'm pleased I went to an all boys school. That's got its different vibe, and so overall, like of my childhood, it's kind of I look back and think like, that was pretty good. So thank you to my mum and dad for providing that.
So all boys school then, Chris?
St Aidan's, yeah. It was because my mum was Catholic, my dad wasn't, but we were raised as Catholics, me and my sister. So we went to Catholic school. So
and did she go to an all girls school?
She went to St Anthony's, yeah. She went to St Anthony's, which was an all girls school. Like about 3 years before I went into comprehensive school, the Catholic school that was literally a 2 or 1 minute walk, St Thomas Aquinas, round the corner to where we lived, closed down. So that left St Aidan. So that was, instead of maybe walking 2 minutes to get to school, I had like a 1 hour bus journey, because the bus journey, the number 6 bus would pick up in Southwick and then go all over the town and eventually drop off right outside of St Aidan's. So we used to get on that. The good thing about getting on where we got on was that was our seats, because by the end of that, or by the time it got to St Aidan's, it was absolutely rammed with loads of like Raji boys wanting to get to school. So I don't know whether there's an apology again to the drivers who used to have to be on that route, but it must have been noisy. But yeah, so St Aidan's, went to St Aidan's, and it was run by the Christian Brothers at the time, and a lot of them were teachers, and one of them was a head teacher. But again, my time in primary school and in secondary school, like I look back and I used to just go and have a laugh. Like it was never. I couldn't apply myself to education in the same way that my sister could, so she kind of like went on to university and everything else. But I was kind of, if I was interested in something, happy days I would go for it. But if I wasn't, like maths and things like that, like in physics, I just, one, I couldn't get my head around them. Two, I just wasn't interested in them. So I just like sort of winged those ones and then got stuck into the ones I was interested in. But overall, it was good. Like I enjoyed it.
It sounds like you were pretty social as well, because some people just get stuck in education and you kind of enjoy it, and some people just have friends groups and just want to go laugh, play football, be a kid. Do you know what I mean? With your mates. Yeah. It sounds like you were more on that side. What were you like as a kid? Were you quite a hyper or what? Could you sit down and kind of be taught?
I think you. Yeah, I mean, I could be taught. I was a bit of a gobshite, and I think now. I had some time in like my 20s where my personality will have definitely changed. I'm sure we'll come on to that as we go on. But I think now, if somebody met us now who knew us at school, would probably say you haven't changed one bit, like personality-wise. Obviously, I look a bit older, and we've all got a bit older. But I think my personality now is extremely similar to what it was like when I was at school, when I was a teenager, because I was quite sociable, like being around people, like getting stuck into things that I enjoyed doing, whether it's like playing a bit of football or listening to music, talking about music, things like that.
So going into a new group of friends, it doesn't really seem to bother you, Chris. Can you just walk into a room and just be kind of, all right, mate, how you doing? Does that bother you or not?
No, not at all. I quite like that. I quite like sort of them interesting stories that you get from a new group of people, or one new person who you're talking to is it's interesting to me. Like, so going into like new social sort of areas and new social groups, like it's not really, it's certainly not something, like I know some people who would be like horrified at having to do that. To me, it's not like, oh, I can do that. It's just, I would do that. Like, it's not really a thing to me. And the job that I've got now, so now I'm a community officer at Sunderland City Council and the active Sunderland team. Part of my work is doing exactly that. It's like going into new community centres or going into maybe like a school it'll be sometimes, or just anywhere where there's a group of people who we'd quite like to become more physically active, I get to go in there and speak to them and just sit down and not talk, but just listen. And to me, that's like, I've hit the jackpot getting that job. And the reason that, I think part of the reason I can do that, part of the training I got was when I was a union rep. I was a union organiser. So for the CWU and Royal Mail, it would be my job to try to get people who weren't in the union to join the union. So for that, you would have to go into like different Royal Mail workplaces. Sometimes I'd be walking in there and I wouldn't know anybody at all. Then you'd have to go around walking the floor, get to know people a little bit, have a bit of chat to them, and then basically be a salesman and try to sell them membership of the union. So chatting to new people, speaking to new people, getting to know new people, it's kind of what I've done for quite a few years without it being a chore or without it being difficult. So
yeah, it sounds like it's just who you are. Kind of, it's
yeah,
definitely a
yeah,
personality trait, isn't it? Of like, it's nature. That's what
yeah.
that is. And I'm sure your parents have just encouraged you, and you kind of seeing them do their thing. Did anything bother you as a kid? Was there any kind of like hiccups? Was
Oh
no
God,
bullying or
yeah. I
anything like
mean,
that, or
like,
what? Or was it just the norm?
I mean, for me, even though, like, on the face of it, it might have seemed like a happy-go-lucky time and like a sociable person and things like that. Like, I certainly didn't get any bullying, but other than kind of, I don't know if you can bully yourself, but I would say around about the age of like 13, 14, when puberty started to hit, I started to get spots. And this is kind of where, like, my life sort of became a parallel of what was internal and what was external. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that kind of thing as well. I mean, like, externally, I'll have looked quite sociable, and I was, and that kind of like happy-go-lucky, nothing particularly bothers us. But the thing with me skin and having spots and having acne, it wasn't just some spots, it was full-blown acne, was like, again, on reflection, and I ended up in therapy a lot time after, like, it was kind of devastating to me self-confidence, even though you wouldn't have known it to speak to us. So
Was that the first time that was a real knock on your confidence, though, Chris? Because it was all, you seem up to this point happy-go-lucky and everything's kind of easy breezy, and you're quite comfortable in yourself and confident. Was this a moment where just kind of it sort of did have a knock on?
yeah, I mean, I cannot remember much beyond what kids would normally get. Like, you get into a few scrapes and things like that, like, but certainly having acne was the thing that really set off, like, deep self-reflection, you could say, at a time, and like not very positive self-reflection and thinking about myself and certainly thinking about the way that I looked. At the time, I would stress over it, and going through puberty, it's like you start getting attracted to whoever you're getting attracted to, like, and I was becoming more interested in girls and things like that. And always in my mind, there's like, obviously you want to be like attractive to other people, and personality wise I could bluff it, but at the same time there's a voice in my head saying, you like, your face looks terrible, you look ugly. And even though, like, no one ever said anything beyond like a couple of words and stuff, I didn't get bullied, I didn't have any particular nicknames connected with having acne. I think possibly my personality, like, helped that. I used to have a laugh, people have a laugh with me. I don't know if I just wasn't a particular, or I didn't attract bullying in the way some other people did. I think maybe if I was like a quiet kid, there might have been, some people might have picked on us a bit more. It certainly wasn't anything to do with like any fighting skills that I had or anything like that, like, because I didn't. But I think maybe because of my personality, it was just, maybe people didn't think there was much point, like, because I would just like laugh things off. And when there was anything said, I would do that, I'd laugh things off, but it would be like internally, it would be awful, because everything that I was saying to myself and would be like confirmed by that someone mentioning my face or somebody like saying something funny. And generally it would be like people really close to us, like my close circle of friends. And looking back, they'll have never meant anything by it, and I certainly don't hold any grudges, because it was just people just fucking talking, kids, like teenage lads talking shite.
It's tough though, because that one tiny little thing could really have a detrimental effect on how you think about it, even though it's a flippant comment. And we do say these things every day, don't we?
Yeah,
And
aye.
So what kind of really like hung on to you?
I think with me, like looking back now, it's not so much things people said. It's like there was moments of realization, like when I went to the doctors. Like I was trying all for a fair few years. I was trying like things like Oxy 10 was a thing that people of my age will look back. I don't know if you can still get it, probably not, because it didn't work. But like Oxy 10, I would try all that, the face washes and things like that. And there was even an advert, I can remember an advert on the telly where, and it was for, I don't know if it was for Oxy 10, it was definitely for a spot cream, where somebody held up a pizza and said, remind you of anyone's face. And then the person comes in with clear skin and everyone's like, whoa. And he'd been using this stuff, and whether it was Oxy 10, I think it probably was Oxy 10. But that was like, then that was an acceptable advert, like pizza face. And
then you had to school up Monday and everyone's calling you pizza face.
Yeah, and it's like, it's, aye, that's the kind of thing. And
you've just caused someone to kind of, you've just given somebody ammunition.
So when people talk about like, I think like woke culture's the thing that people talk about now, and I kind of think, well, it's good that them kind of things get thought about and considered and not go on the telly now. But certainly I tried the skin creams, I tried everything and things like that, and nothing had worked. So I went to the GP. And the GP like looked at my skin and said like, oh yeah, there's a lot of different medications. And at that moment I was thinking, oh class, this is bound to work. And then he was looking at us and he's looking at us like that, and he says, you're probably left with a little bit scarring, but we'll be able to clear up with spots. And that moment I was like, what's he talking about? Like left with scarring? So he gave us a prescription for this stuff, and I went home, and instead of going home thinking, right, we'll try this and hopefully my spots will clear up, all I was thinking was, what does he mean there's going to be scarring? And so I went home and got like 2 mirrors, and like was looking like that, and I already like had like this, and it wasn't me in my mind, because I could see that I had spots. It wasn't like body dysmorphia. I did have spots on my face. So I got 2 mirrors and I'm looking like that. And for the first time, I looked at what my face looked like from the side, because he just said like, you're going to be left with scarring. And I'm looking, and like I have got like sort of slightly pitted skin. So I have got acne scarring, but it had never been a consideration that after my skin clearing up, I still might have what I would term bad skin. So I'm looking, and I can remember that moment, like it was in my mum and dad's room, because they like that big mirror, and I'm looking like that, and I was just, I can remember it now, and it's welling us up now, thinking like in that moment, it just completely crushed us, because I was like, how I thought I looked from the front was nothing compared to what I thought I looked like from the side, or what I looked like from the side. And this thing of like acne scarring became like a really deep-rooted thing in my mind, that like, so I'm going to clear my spots up at some point, because people are saying things, oh well, as you grow, your skin will change and you'll stop getting spots. It's just, and so I was kind of looking forward to getting older to not have spots. But then that got knocked out, because the doctor says you're going to be left with scarring. So I'm looking, I'm thinking, oh, there's a scar, that's going to be a scar, that's going to be a scar. And like I started taking the tablets, the first tablets, but every day I was looking at it, I had 2 mirrors then. Got another mirror from, I completely taken by like how my skin looked. And I was hoping it would get better. The first tablets didn't do anything, went back and was prescribed some other tablets, didn't do anything. And I don't know how many tablets I went through to get to a medication called Roaccutane. And Roaccutane is it's like last chance saloon for acne, because there's so many associated side effects, and it was more the mental health side effects that were in the news, and because a couple of kids in America had killed themselves while taking Roaccutane, and like massive mood swings and everything. So
did you know about this before you took it as well, Chris?
yeah, it didn't bother us at all. I just wanted to get my skin cleared up. By
Really?
that
So
time, it wasn't a
clearing the spots was the first thing on your mind. Yeah?
wasn't a consideration that because like read up a bit about as much as you could read up on something back in the day without the internet. Read some stuff about it, and it was like 1 in 100,000 people might have suicidal thoughts, and I was just like, well, that's no really, and if I do start to feel a bit dodgy, I'll just deal with it, because I'll be getting rid of my spots. Or if I start to feel low, I'll just think, well, I'm going to get rid of my spots, because Roaccutane, I don't know what the score is now, but then it was kind of like, if you take this, your spots are going to clear up, because I think it does something to the oil producing glands or something in your skin. It basically gets rid of them, or stops them producing the oil that then infects the skin and causes acne. And so I went back home, and the doctor had says like, well, like we'll prescribe you Roaccutane, but you need to go home and speak with your parents before we can prescribe Roaccutane. So I went home, spoke to my mum. My mum just hit the roof. She was like, you're not taking that. And I had a massive row about it and saying I am taking it. But like, she really didn't want us to take Roaccutane because of the publicised side effects. And like, I think my mum, being worst case scenario woman, she just had me taking 1 Roaccutane tablet, and then a day later I can chuck myself off a bridge, or trying to kill myself, because that's what happened in America. However, after the first sort of discussion about it, which was basically an argument saying like, you're not taking that stuff, she kind of agreed, but on the proviso that if I was starting to get mood swings or anything like that, I would let them know and stop taking it. I completely lied and said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I just wanted to get this stuff. So got prescribed Roaccutane, and the doctor said like, it'll get worse before it gets better. And the reason for that, one, is you start to get used to your skin starts to get used to the different changes. The other thing is you've got to stop using any other spot cream. So the spot cream I was using, I had to get rid of that, and then just use a very simple face wash and a bit moisturiser, which turned out to be a lot of moisturiser, because another thing that Roaccutane does is dry your skin out. So at the time, I was working at Royal Mail, the parcel force. Then at the time,
so how old were you when this? Because you started like 14 years old. So
by that time, I'll have been around about 19, 20.
Oh, so it's been going on for quite a long time.
Yeah, it was all through me teens,
and then part of your life,
so even though, because I was, well, actually, I'm saying even though, I'm like, I don't know why the doctor, maybe because I was still living at home, but I'm assuming that over 18, I would basically take whatever I want. But he did say, go and have a conversation with your parents about this. He may have known my parents actually, but I'll have been like, probably, I started when I was 19, so it might have been around about 20 when I took Roaccutane.
So this must have been like your last ditch attempt, because you've been suffering with this for quite a few years.
Since about 13, 14, so it'll have been a good like 6 years by the time I got the Roaccutane. But I didn't get the medication probably until maybe 17 or 18.
Okay.
I didn't try anything like that, like, because I just assumed it would clear up, but it just wasn't going anywhere.
So it affected yourself in a way, like just having the spots. I mean, did it affect like relationships, girlfriends, stuff like that?
Didn't have any.
No?
And just completely, me confidence was just shot to pieces. Like, just wasn't there. Like,
really?
It was in the minus. Like, it was. So even like if like a girl like paid attention, which they did, if a girl like paid attention and certainly didn't have a relationship, like sort of interesting things like that, like, but nothing that would be termed a relationship. So even when they showed interest, it would be like, oh, this is good. But then it would be like, you know, but your skin looks the way your skin looks. So it was always like a bit of a battle in my head of like, well, hang on, there's this girl who's quite attractive, showing interest, so it can't be that bad. But then the other voice in my head basically was more dominant, saying, your skin's absolutely disgusting, what you're on about. So it could never, the balance of someone being interested was like that, and then the kind of self-confidence and the way that I felt about myself and how I looked was just outweighed that completely. So
did you push yourself away from people as well, Chris? It was like more of a self-sabotage thing, you know?
yeah, aye. It was certainly I didn't make effort. Like if I found somebody attractive in those years, not in a million years would I gone up to them and say like, I find you attractive, mate. Mind you, does anyone? Like, it might have like got someone else to go and say something, but even then it was just like, it was a bit of a terrifying prospect, really, to be honest. And that's, looking back, it was because of my confidence, but in the moment it was such a confusing time, especially if like a girl showed interest. It was like a whirlwind of like, boy, this is a good thing, but also like, but your skin's minging. It's like,
It just seems a
I
massive...
make sense of it now.
Yeah.
But imagine when you're like in your teens and or a little bit later and like starting to like go out and like and drink a bit and things like that. You're dealing with all that stuff anyway of like growing up and going through puberty and everything else, and it was just this the voice in my head saying you look disgusting was dominant and loudest. That was, and it's not. I don't think it's not complicated for me on reflection to think, yeah, that's why you didn't have any confidence, because that voice was saying, you're looking in the mirror, or looking in your two mirrors, seeing the spots, and that voice is going, yeah, there you go. It does look disgusting.
Yeah, when you're
To
younger,
me.
you don't really see it that way. You just kind of, the days just go on and you just go through life, don't you?
I never process it. I never like.
Yeah. You don't really think about it and try and figure it out and all that kind of
No,
stuff. But do you look back on reflection and go, I was confident, and then if that never happened to me at 14, what would it have been like? Do you look back and think like that or not? Or do you not?
what? Not so much like how would have life gone if I'd never had spots. I don't think, other than maybe just add more girlfriends. That's about it, really, because it didn't affect. I still went out. I didn't hide away. I still went out, still played football, still went out for drinks, still like, or hung about the streets when we were a little bit younger. We always went out. I didn't like not go out because of how I looked. And I didn't force myself out. I didn't sit there thinking, right, you have to go out, because staying in, like that thought never ran that deep. I wanted to get out because I used to go out and have a laugh with my friends. That was it. And it wasn't like deep enough to think, right, I'm struggling with this, so I'll get out and play football. I'll go and have a drink. I'll get out with my friends. It was never that deep. It was just like, that's what I wanted to do, so I went and done that. But at the same time, all the time in the back of my head, if any, like I would go out and I would play football and I'd go out and stuff like that, it wouldn't be like a constant voice of, you look disgusting, or if you go into a bathroom and you look in the mirror, it wasn't a case of like washing your hands or whatever, going for piss, wash your hands, and then look in the mirror and just stand there and going, you look disgusting. It would just be wash my hands and get out. But if a situation arose where, like, say if a girl was interested, or if I was sat at home looking in the mirror, then I would just sit and take the time to like look and stare and kind of beat myself up and allow that voice to get just louder and louder, and the confidence to shrink and shrink and shrink. And I think nowadays, if somebody goes to their GP and says, I really want to get rid of my spots, the GP might say, right, we're going to give you this medication, and they might dig a bit deeper and say, like, how do you feel about your spots? And they might offer a bit talking therapy. I hope so anyway. But back then it was just like, here's some tablets, and I mean, they work, like the Roaccutane work, like it.
So at 20, you took these super tablets, and then all of a sudden it's kind of starting to work.
It got really bad, the acne, because I stopped like washing. I didn't stop washing. I stopped washing with like anti-acne treatments. So and they were right when they said it'll get worse before it gets better. So my face, like really, like there was the like here on, I think it's on, like it is, it's on that side. There's like a bit of a pit there, and I remember the spot that was there was so big, and like it was not pressing on the eye, but it was, you know, if you've got like a black eye and it's swollen, it was like that on the side of my head. And it was giving us bad heads and stuff like that for a couple of weeks, and I was just like, fuck, this is getting worse. So, but from what I knew of Roaccutane and what the doctor had said, like I was kind of thinking, well, it's just ride it out. And as it happened, I think it was maybe about 3 months, and my skin started like to settle down. The redness was gone. I wasn't getting what you might term zits anymore, and it was like that's where through the treatment I was getting like flaky skin and everything else. So it was like my hands were drying and everything. So I was just like, fuck. It's like,
gone from one
why does
another.
it have to be like, why can you not just give us some tablets that just stop us getting spots? Like, but at the time I was like, fuck, I'm putting like cream on my hands and stuff. But the thought of not having spots was like, that got us through. And like by the end of it, like my skin had really settled, calmed down. And then I just had to deal with the fact that I was left with acne scars. And that was, it took the shine off my skin calming a little bit. But at the same time, it was like, by that time, I'd kind of got used to it. The thought of, like, if I hadn't known about the acne scarring, being left with the acne scarring, and then I took the Roaccutane, and at the end of that, I was left with the acne scarring, that might have been more difficult to deal with. But because I'd already, by that time, I'd had like maybe 2 years or something of trying different treatments or getting my head around being left with acne scar and everything else, while not pleasant, wasn't like the hammer blow it could have been.
So, any mental health side effects you noticed about these things or not?
No, because I was already kind of going through the mill, so nothing that I can remember. Like, I remember having an argument with my mum thinking that it was the Roaccutane, and I remember maybe it did make us a little bit short, but
it's hard to say it when it's in your head. It's hard to say if you've changed because you live with yourself every day. So you probably wouldn't notice that
no.
on somebody on the outside. But again, you could just be, leave us alone, man. I'm all right.
I know, because I was still living at my mum and dad's. I know throughout the time I was taking that tablets, my mum would have been watching us like a hawk. So having an argument with her, and she was saying, if this is what that stuff's doing to you, stop and taking it.
Yeah, so she's red flagging anything.
Yeah, because she's my mum, so she's can't, and she had them concerns beforehand. So whatever happened after that, if I got up one morning, she was like, "Oh, how you feeling?" I was like, a bit crap. She's been like, what? Well, it's the tablets. You stop taking them tablets. Yeah. Like any up or down she would have attributed the tablets, but stopping, not getting the spots was a bit of a change. Then beyond that, it took a little bit more time before like calming that voice in my head of like, you look disgusting. It got to the point where it was like, you look acceptable. I never felt like I've never felt like good looking or anything like that, but I kind of felt like comfortable in my own skin.
So it kind of settled down in a way, and you were almost feeling like normal in yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a good way.
You're not thinking about the spots all the time. That's probably a better way of putting it.
I wasn't.
Was it not on your mind now? It's kind of, all right, that's something off my worry list.
It was like I wasn't looking in the mirror as much and beating myself up as much. I wasn't doing the two-mirror thing and things like that. Like it was, it was like, it was one of the best things that I ever did, like going on Roaccutane and having that, like, just that voice, like shutting the fuck up. It was nice to not have that. And even though I was left with a legacy of being self-conscious, which then led to I guess, the biggest kind of battle that I've had so far in my life. That it was, but it was just nice for that to calm a little bit. But then, in the back of my mind, I was still left. It wasn't like all of a sudden it was like, right, I'm not getting spots anymore. Hey, you look great. This is all good. And then I like carried on with life. I was still self-conscious about the way that I looked, to a degree that kind of led to looking around for coping mechanisms without even knowing I was looking around for coping mechanisms. Didn't understand any of what I was going through.
So from that time where it's cleared up, was there a period where things were normal? And I just want to get to a point of the coping mechanisms. Do you think that's just a normal way of just being when you go out with your mates and you start partying and stuff like that? Was it something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't
or were
like
you pushing a bit more because of certain things in the back of your head which you hadn't dealt with, you think?
it was only during therapy in my late 20s where I looked back and I had the help of a therapist to look back and make sense of what I was going through, or even open my eyes to what I was going through, because I had kind of gone through it without specifically thinking I had coping mechanisms, or using things like alcohol or drugs as coping mechanisms. Well, I sat down one day and thought, tell you what, when I have a drink, I feel a lot less self-conscious. So what I'm going to do is have a drink to feel a lot less self-conscious. Like I was a working class lad from Sunderland. You gone out on the piss. You just gone out and everyone gets drunk and feels great.
It's socially acceptable, isn't it? Plus, you just do the things. We've all done it, we all do it, you know. It just becomes a norm because you go out. So what changes when you're going out and you're coming home? What's different for you? Because I know you had issues. When did all of these issues start, Chris?
The issues with, I mean, alcohol was never a particular issue. Drugs became an issue.
Did they come hand in hand? Did they come together?
No, it was alcohol first, but nothing more than anybody else was doing at the time. Like anybody, I was used to go out and have a few drinks and things like that. Like I know that I used to have a few drinks at home on my own before going out. And looking back, it wasn't because I quite liked alcohol. It was because I felt calmer before going out, because there was still a little bit like, if we were going out, I'd feel like butterflies in my stomach, and I used to wonder.
Self-conscious, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to wonder if like, oh, I'm just too excited for going out. But in reality, it was because I was like, right, we're going out, and you're stone cold sober, and you're thinking about going out, and you think about, oh, well, we're going to go clubbing and things like that. There's going to be lasses there and stuff like that, and you want to look good, and you get dressed up and dressed in nice clothes, and then part of us was still thinking, I wish my acne was like on my back, so I could just put a t-shirt on, because there's nothing you can do when it's there, unless you're going to wear a balaclava, and it's not really practical going around in balaclava. So
even when it's cleared up, you were still self-conscious about the scarring and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was still self-conscious about my skin, and that, even though it got a lot better and I wasn't as critical of my skin, it was still like, I didn't like the way that I looked, basically. But it was just, I accepted how I looked rather than liked how I looked, if that makes sense.
So we're getting to a point, because I know, you know, you've had a few issues, substance issues in the past. Just like, at what point did it start getting worse, Chris? Because, you know, you start out, as we all do, drinking, going out partying, because it's a normal thing to do with your mates. At what point did it start just slipping away, getting a bit serious?
25 to 27 was the problem time. Early 20s, drinking, but again, no more than anybody else was drinking. Gone out, maybe having a few drinks beforehand, calmed us down, happy days, gone out. I wasn't thinking to myself, I'm self-conscious, I need to have a drink to go out. It was just a mechanism that kind of dropped in there, really, without much thought. Like, took some speed, really enjoyed the feeling of speed, really like enjoyed. With alcohol, it was always getting towards the end of the night and started to feel a bit groggy and everything else. With speed, that grogginess came the next day. The come down came the next day. Just enjoyed the feeling of speed. It didn't take it for too long. Then started going out what I would term proper clubbing, introduced to ecstasy and cocaine. And it was those two things that for a couple of years it was really good fun, and going out and taking ecstasy, taking coke, getting high was just the most amazing thing. And I'm not going to lie about that. We had some amazing nights out with my friends who used to go clubbing with. Saw some like world's best DJs in this little club in Newcastle where we used to always go, and just had the time of our lives. But as I got around about 25, I started feeling anxious, and the anxiety started to come.
Is this like after you kind of, obviously during the week, were you feeling more anxious, or were you feeling anxious when you're taking the drugs?
Before anytime I wasn't taking the drugs, I felt anxious. So I think my natural anxiety and problems with being self-conscious, while when I was having a drink or then subsequently when I was taking drugs, were like had disappeared. It just exacerbated what I thought it started to settle down. The anxiety kind of, it didn't roar back because it was just a steady build. But I would say around about the age of 25, I started to notice it on the day-to-day and started to feel like there was a little bit paranoia creeping in about like people looking at us and like judging how I looked, and the fact that I was taking drugs was just kind of sending that off into the stratosphere. And the more drugs that I took, like, again, like, I had great times and I just loved the feeling of getting high on ecstasy. I loved taking cocaine. I like enjoyed it. It wasn't like, it wasn't, oh God, I need to take some cocaine because I feel self-conscious. It was like, I really want to take some cocaine because it's mint. And then how I feel. And I would describe myself now as an addict, because if you say it was now, would you like to take a line of cocaine? Say yes, because I really liked the way that it used to feel. And if it feels the same nowadays, if it was a line of cocaine there and you said there was no chance of it affecting your mental health as a line of cocaine, I would want to take that cocaine, because it was just, that was the drug that I loved taking in particular.
So when did it get bad then, Chris? I mean, it sounds like you were,
so at the
pretty
time,
much having a handle on it and just going through normal anxiety, which people do. It's usually because of the come downs and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But were you weren't masking it with more? You weren't kind of doing it to kind of feel numb again because you didn't want that anxiety? So, like, when did it get a bit tricky?
So for me, when I started to notice it more, like, I accepted that midweek blues was a thing. Everybody knew about the midweek blues if you were taking stuff on a weekend. I wasn't taking stuff every day. It was just like, right, I'm going to get the midweek blues. I'll handle the midweek blues. I'm going to feel shite in the middle of the week. That's just how you feel. But the anxiety felt a little bit different. And from talking to people about like the midweek blues, it would come on a Tuesday. You'd feel rough on a Wednesday. Thursday was a little bit dodgy. By the time Friday rolled around, though, you're ready to go again, and everything's happy days, or at least that's the theory. For me, it was like, it was just anxiety all the time, always feeling a bit paranoid, and like thinking to myself, like standing in queues and standing still was an issue for us. Like going shopping, like I used to go like do a bit shopping. I was still living at my mum and dad's, still working at Royal Mail, where I would like go and do my own shopping and things like that, and like stand in the queue. I remember standing as doing Bolton, and every time I was in the queue, I would start to feel like sweaty and hot. And I wasn't imagining it, because I could feel like the sweat in my hair, and I was just like, shit, people know I'm like sweating. And then that would be like looking around. I dare say not one person paid any attention, because everyone was just wrapped up in their own lives. And was one of the first things that the therapist said when we went into therapy, and he was like, didn't take this the wrong way, but not many people care about other people's lives, and you're no different. And it was like, he was so direct with that kind of thing. It was like that stuff really like stayed with us, and that stuff really helped us. But at the time it was like, oh, I'm sweating here, like, and then sometimes I would just give it up, wouldn't stay in the queue. I would just go and put the stuff back. Rather go back in the shop, put all the stuff back that I picked up, put the basket down and leave, than wait another 2 minutes in the queue and pay for me stuff and gone. And
because if you look back now, it's, if you were that person now, you'd be like, I've got a problem, because you could see it completely clearly, couldn't you? But at the time, you just needed to get out,
that
and
was
that was the right way to do it.
I was living. It was
but it's mad when you look back though, and you go, if I did that now,
that's fucking insane.
I've got a problem. It is. It's kind of, it's mad that I would do that, and why would I do that? But at the time, you just want to get out, and you want to kind of change the place that you're in, because you just want to. The anxiety's too much.
Yeah.
So when did you go, this is a problem? When was that pinnacle moment that you go, I'm having problems, I need to sort this out?
Well, I lived like that for about 2 years, and again, like, it wasn't like one day I was kind of feeling the midweek blues and stuff, and then the next day I was just had this 24/7 anxiety. It kind of crept up and built up and built up and built up. I was still going out, dealing with the anxiety. Never took a day off work through it. Never got into a situation with debt through it. Never, like, to be fair, I lived with my mum and dad. I was working full time. I wasn't a union rep then, so all I had to do was go into work, deliver the parcels, and go home. Never walked into work, got sent home because I was obviously feeling the after effects of big nights out or anything like that. Kept it extremely internal. And I think I'd had practice at internalizing and hiding how I was feeling inside, because of all them years of teenage, like, anxiety about how I looked and the self-confidence issue, so I could mask it quite well. Never got into problem with dealers or anything like that, like, so, and nobody ever come up with us and said, you need to get help, like, you're going a little bit far. It was just it was me, like, my thing, and like my own sort of battle. And because it built up slowly, I just learned to cope with it. It wasn't like I didn't fall off a cliff into this like anxious mess. It just built up, and that was normal to me. To like, now, like, my anxiety levels are up here, and regular anxiety levels are just like here. So everybody's got them. Everyone like worries to different degrees, but my like regular anxiety level will have been like up here. So for a regular person who probably didn't have a cocaine habit, to get to there is some like probably life-changing event, like, or loss of job or something like that. But because I'd built it up slowly, that was just my normal. But it was when I used to deliver the Metro Centre, and the day it came on top, and the day it like crashed down, so to speak, in not very spectacular fashion, by the way. There's no like sort of Hollywood kickoff or out like that. But I was delivering in the Metro Centre. I used to do that round, and I was delivering. This is how long ago it was. It was Callis Pegasus, the travel agent, and by that time we had the machines to sign on. It was this big brick of a thing, and I can remember handing the machine over to the lass, and she had curly blonde hair, and she was quite attractive. I remember that about her. And I remember asking her to sign her name, and then that thing of like the sweats started, but like in a way that I hadn't felt before. All of a sudden, I could fit. My top was just soaked, and I started struggling to breathe. Got the thing back, signed her name, got the thing back, and I just like walked quickly across the mall. And when you're delivering the Metro Centre, the fire exits, you go through them to get into the service corridors where you park your vans in the service yards. Burst through that door, slammed it shut, and just sat on the ground in the service corridor, this long grey corridor, and I was just sat there and I couldn't breathe. My chest was just tight, and what I now know was a massive panic attack, but I didn't know what it was then. I just sat there and I was like, just like gone for a minute. Like, I just didn't know what was happening. And then I pulled myself around, started breathing. I'm like looking at myself, and I'm just like, I'm like, this is bad. This like, so I went back to my van, sat in my van, and it was a Sage Mobile. That was my first mobile phone, and I had the doctor's number on it, and rang the doctors, and like, just said to them like, she was like, yeah. And this was about 3 in the afternoon, by the way. It wasn't like you know, it was supposed to ring on the morning or book in advance. And I can remember just saying, I don't know what's the matter. And I tried to describe what had happened. And I says, look, can I have an appointment? She was like, you need to ring back up tomorrow. And I was like, begged her for an appointment. And she says, give us a minute. Went and came back and says, look, just come for 5:30 and the doctor will see you. So I was like, right, champion. So I remember hanging up the phone, got myself together, carried on the day, and then went to the doctors and sat in the doctors. You know, like GPs are always overrunning. And I'm sat in the doctors and it started again. And I was just like, I'm fucking out of here. Like, it was about 10 to 6 by the time my name came over. And went in. And I guess I don't look too dissimilar. I'm probably in a bit more of a state than I am right now. But sat down and he looked at us and he goes, what's up? And I like went, nothing. And he goes, are you sure? And I go, yeah. I said, I'm just feeling a bit rough. And he's like, right. And he looked at us and he goes, are you drinking too much? And I was like, no, which I wasn't. And he says, and what about drugs? And just started crying again. It was like, so I told him, basically just spilled pretty much everything. And I remember him saying, it was like that moment, just saying, which was wise advice, just saying, I think you should stop taking drugs, Christopher. And I just looked at him like, I think you read it. And like he started like chatting away, and he goes, I'm going to give you some beta blockers. And I was like, well, what's beta blockers? And he goes, it'll just calm you down a little bit. And because he was talking about like how I was feeling, and he goes, well, that's like anxiety, or sounds like anxiety, so I'll give you beta blockers and they'll calm you down. And it's like, cool your heart rate and things like that. And I was like, all right, yeah, that sounds good. And he said, I'll refer you to therapy. And he said that, and I was just like, what's he on about? And he was like, he said, I think that'll help. And I was like, at that point, I was just kind of, I would have agreed or anything like at that point. So he says, like, so he gives us the prescription, went, had to wait the next day because the chemist was shut. So I managed to get the prescription the next day, started taking the beta blockers, and then it was a couple of weeks. This was at the end of November when I was 27. And a couple of weeks later, the appointment with the psychiatrist came through, and it was headed Cherry Knowles Hospital. And if you're from Sunderland or the North East, you'll know the Cherry Knowles Hospital was like the mental asylum to use the old vernacular. But now it's a hospital. It's a different name now, but now you'd quite rightly call them hospitals. But I read it and I sat on the end of my bed and I just looked at Cherry Knowles. By this time, the beta blockers didn't have too much of an effect, but I certainly was a little bit more self-aware of my situation. And I sat down and I just looked at the letter, and it was February was the appointment with the psychiatrist, and I'm just looking at Cherry Knowles, and I was like, wasn't another freak out. I just sat and accepted, like, so this is where I'm at. And it was like, I'm getting a letter saying you'd be considered an outpatient, and I was just like, that's it, Cherry Knowles, that. And I kind of, but like again, like I just sat there and just accepted it. So I guess I'd at least moved to the point where it was like, this kind of got on, this kind of carry on. And I went to see the psychiatrist. It did like a little questionnaire thing, and then apparently I wasn't bad enough to carry on with the psychiatrist, but I was referred to a psychiatric nurse. And I went, I think it was, I want to say it was about 2 years, but it was probably a little bit less than that. I got like a monthly appointment at first, then it went to 2 months, and then the last appointment I had, we just talked about golf. I was discharged, but I tried different medication and things like that and fell on something that calmed us down. But that 2 years kind of, I can't really remember much of the 2 years before that. That happened that was significant, but that like 2 years of therapy, I don't know if it like saved us, but I've since been like, kind of got told like, it sounds like you were probably about 6 months away from being an inpatient rather than an outpatient, from what I told the therapist. But like I told my sister, didn't tell my mum and dad. Still to this day, I haven't had a conversation about what I went through with my mum and dad. Don't know if they know. I kind of assume they do, because I put a lot out there on social media, and I know some stuff that I've put on social media has got back to them. But sitting down and having a conversation with them, I just still find it would be difficult, even though I'm kind of through everything. I've done my therapy and I've got through to a point where like it's not a thing anymore. But told me friends I went clubbing with, told me dealer, who helpfully said, oh, well, if you're in that kind of state, well, you're not getting it off me, even though it would have been quite easy to get it elsewhere. Him saying that, because he's really sound actually as a bloke, like when I said that to him, he just said, oh, well, you're not getting in. He was the only person to buy stuff from. And then my friends who went clubbing, and I just stopped going out for 6 months. Didn't do anything, didn't drink through Christmas. Tried to like, told people it was like a health thing, and I just didn't fancy drinking anymore. It was like somewhat different. I'd been advised, while you're taking the tablets, don't drink alcohol with them. So at that point, I kind of just wanted to stop feeling how I was feeling. So I kind of followed what I was told. And then went to see the therapist, and cognitive behavior therapy was the thing that really helped us, particularly in them moments where, like, it wasn't because I was taking tablets, I didn't have anxiety, I still had the anxiety. It was still quite bad for a while after. But I was just learning these things of, if you start feeling like people are staring at you, if you feel a bit hot and you think people are staring at you, them words of like, keep in mind that people are just going about their day, they're not looking around, staring at everybody and paying that much attention to what people are doing. And instead of the voice in my head saying, everyone's staring at you because you're sweating, it was like the voice in my head became, people are just going about their day, they're not looking at you. And even if somebody did look at you and think that you were looking a bit weird, then what's the actual harm? It's just somebody looking at you. And it was really difficult, but the more I did it, I guess like anything, the more I practiced arresting them voices in my head that said, oh, sorry, not the voice, I didn't have voices in my head, by the way, the voice, my own voice that was telling me that person's looking at you, or like, here's the anxiety coming. In the past, I would just let the anxiety flow and I would just feel shit, and that would go on for hours, if not days, or it was always there, but would go up and down. But it just slowly got better. And well, I remember when the therapist says, like, right, we're gonna put a little bit more time in between your sessions, and I was like, right, okay. And that was another thing over. And then, like I said earlier, like that last session, I'd started playing golf with some people from work, and the therapist played golf. And that last session went in, how are you feeling? Yeah, I'm alright. It's been good, in fact. Like, it's getting better. I feel like I'm getting better. There's been a bit more progress. I'm not feeling as anxious. I don't want to take drugs. I haven't took drugs and everything else. And then he goes, right, he says, you played golf much in the last like couple of months? And I was like, yeah, I did this. And he was like, oh, I've played there before. And I said, oh, I went to play there. And I was like, it was shite at golf. Like, I don't play golf now. But he would have a chat, and for like an hour, we just talked about golf. And he was like, I think you're ready to be discharged. And when he said that, I was just like, no, I don't think I am. He goes, we've spoke about golf for the full session. He goes, I think you're ready. And then got discharged, and like, touch wood, as far as official therapy goes, I've never had to go back since 27. Since that day in the Metro Centre, I've never took cocaine anymore, never took ecstasy anymore. Don't even drink anymore now. It's been like 4.5 years since I've had a drink now. So kind of live quite a dull life of sobriety now. Like, things have changed completely. I'm 47 now. Like it's coming up there. It'll be 20 years in November since the last time I took any coke or any ecstasy, and my life, like, I don't know what my life would have been like if I'd carried on. Maybe it would have been an inpatient, maybe it would have lost my job, maybe it would have got to that kind of situation that I know plenty of other people have done with their addictions, like that. Their life gets ruined. Luckily, I never got to that point. I haven't got, like, if anyone's watching thinking, I've heard stories that were certainly more entertaining, you might say, not for the people at the centre of the story, not for them people, but certainly they've got bigger things happened that made them stop or made them take notice and sort themselves out. But mine was very much like, I just didn't want to feel like that anymore, and with help with the NHS medication, and then my friends being so understanding as well, like my club and friends, nobody said to us in all the time that I saw them after, no one said, like, oh, do you not want something? Or eventually I could get to the point where I'd go out and they'd be off in another room doing stuff, and I'd be fine with going out and doing that. I would think to myself, I'd love to have a line of cocaine now, but it was always, but that would undo the last, at one point it was like the last 12 months of work that you've done. Then it was like the last 2 years. So for me, the last 12, I'm really protective of the coming up to 20 years. So if, like I said, if there was a line of cocaine there, I'd be like, I'd love to take that. I wouldn't, but I'd love to take it because the feeling was great. But like, again, reflecting and having this moment of reflecting, I do it quite a lot nowadays, like, is reflecting. If I'm out on my bike on my own, I'll think back to them times, and I think I've done all right. Like, I've kind of, with a lot of help, I've managed to turn things around, and especially that first couple of years, like the help that I got, I couldn't have done that by myself. Like, I couldn't have just said, like, within minutes of that panic attack, I was begging the doctors for an appointment. So if I couldn't have just said, right, I'm feeling shit, I need to stop taking drugs, I'll stop taking drugs. No. I guess that's not how addiction works, but with the help that I got and the work that they helped me do on myself, I think my life's gone a way that I'm extremely pleased it has, and relieved as well.
Were you fearful at that time, Chris, at that moment, the anxiety, the panic attack? Do you think you were dying?
I couldn't breathe, but I didn't have that thought process of like, shit, I'm dying. But I don't think it lasted long enough for us to get into that situation. Like, between the girl signing her name and me starting to feel sweaty and struggling to breathe to then standing up from that corridor, it was probably about 2 or 3 minutes. And even though that might seem long enough to think, I'm struggling to breathe, I'm going to die, I just, like, sat down and I was just like, it just...
Did fear
not
kick
death.
in?
I was terrified,
like,
because I didn't know what was happening. I hadn't had a panic attack before. I'd had anxiety, I'd had high anxiety. I maybe had anxiety attacks, but it was always, other than the sweating and feeling hot, the physical side of the anxiety attacks, that was it. It was all in the head.
It's debilitating, isn't it? It's almost, it's taken over you. It's taken over your control of your body.
That's what I became, I would say, like. So you're right in a way that it had taken over, but to me that was normal. The panic attack wasn't normal. If that had just been feeling hot and feeling sweaty, I probably would have just went back to my van and got on with my day. If it hadn't got that extreme, it might have been, I might have just carried on, but I don't know how long I could have carried on living like that. Was just this kind of the trigger for me actually saying, I really need to sort my head out.
And the decision not to like tell your parents as well, what was that about? Was that because of the tablets you've done before, the reaction because you knew your parents?
I could have told my dad, and my dad would have dealt with it, and my dad would have supported us, and my dad would have been as calm as you need somebody to be in that situation. But my mum would have had us dead. And
so you're protecting them in a way by not telling them, are you?
I didn't want to tell my dad because I didn't want my dad to have a secret from my mum, a big secret. And I didn't tell my mum because even though she would have, if I say to them now, there's an issue or something like that, she'll worry and everything else. But I think because I'm like in my late 40s now, I just probably think, well, he can deal with it. I'll worry, but he'll be able to deal with that. At 27, in a fairly immature 27, still living at my mum and dad's, so still, like, I'm sure they still felt like, I mean, she still calls us a band now, so she probably would have then even more so. But if I'd said to them, look, I'm addicted to cocaine, I've got massive anxiety, I've had to go to the doctors, I'm on tablets, that would have been like, she would have heard cocaine and linked it, because everyone says heroin and cocaine, so she would have had me dead, basically. She would have had us dead in that alleyway. She wouldn't have understood. And
yeah, because if you've never done it before, you don't understand it, you know.
No, mixed in with her natural jump to the worst case scenario. And for me, as I went through the therapy, it was like if my mum was constantly saying, "Are you all right? Where are you going now? What time are you going to be back?" It would have got. I know her instinct would have been to like worry, and then that would have been detrimental to my recovery. I think to have somebody so overbearing in a good way. Like I don't want to paint my mum as somebody who would have deliberately got in the way of my recovery, but I just think to be able to go home and have them think nothing's wrong is much better than go home and have my mum straight away. I've seen what she gets like. So until I walked through that door alive, should have probably been at work, should have been sat at home, chewing herself to bits. And it may have set something off in her, to be honest. Like, and
yeah, because you've already got one problem, you don't need two, do you?
No, aye. And the problem that I had, dealing with that would have been far more difficult with that extra problem that I'd caused me mum. And like, the more I thought, it wasn't in that moment I thought all this, but when I got into my recovery and thought like, I'm not telling them. Even though when I was starting to feel better, I'm like, I'm not telling them because that's not something I want to cause them. And I've fucked this up for me, so I'll deal with this, and I've got the support network that I need. I had the NHS, I had the therapy, I had my sister, and I had my close friends, and that was all I needed.
Yeah, because I'm thinking you must have felt like a lonely place because you're on your own, but you kind of weren't because you had these lovely strangers and obviously your sister and your mates to kind of fall back on if you need it, you know.
Yeah, and that was kind of all that I really needed, like, and I reconnected as well, like one of my friends in that, like there was times they'd be playing like five-side football and stuff like that, and I couldn't be bothered again, like, and I remember around about that time, like I reconnected with people who I'd kind of knocked about with when I was a teenager a little bit, and started like playing five-a-side football and things like that, and so things slowly got better, and now I don't know if I'm glad I went through it, but it's given us the kind of wisdom that I don't think you could read about the subject and have that same wisdom. When you go through, like, for me anyway, if somebody now, which can happen, presents a problem with substances, I'll immediately say, like, I'll tell them a bit about my story and says, look, I've been through that, like, and I can feel them connecting. And even though I don't recall a time when I spoke to somebody who had similar issues, I think that now the wisdom I've got from that and the experience from that is kind of, one, it helps me speak to people who've gone through similar or gone through similar, and secondly, it's also motivated us in what I'm like doing now and trying in some small way to like give people things that'll help them.
Yeah, because you're combining your experiences and also with your ability to you kind of bring people together, and you create communities as well, like you did as a
Yeah.
kid, as well as, it just seems like these two worlds have kind of caught up with each other, and they're finally merging together, where you're in a space where you can help with the experience that you've got and the personality that you have. So these two worlds really connect with,
Yeah.
what you're actually doing now as a person, as an adult. And I just wanted to kind of get on to asking you about your management of what you do, with the mental health thing, because you're heavily into triathlon, which I know, but did that come about because of looking to find something away from, the party time? Were you looking to kind of do something like that, or was it just something that you found kind of as an
That
interest?
triathlon in particular was just a chance meeting with somebody who talked about triathlon with the kind of enthusiasm that I'm like a right sucker for. But certainly in the early days of my recovery, then going into me sort of getting to me 30s, I always did a bit of exercise to make us feel a little bit better and keep us on the level. Like it was kind of commonly known back then that they're doing a bit of exercise, and the doctor said it, the GP said it actually before the therapist said it, who then like the internet was a thing by that time, and you could like read up on things yourself. So people had like advised do a bit running, do a bit cycling, and to help do a bit sport, get out and about and things like that, go for a walk. And
So just a kind of circumstance thing, you kind of
so
fell into it, yeah?
yeah, so for me the exercise thing was always there. Still played a little bit of football, and then I was 38 and had done a parcel force, run up to Christmas, done a lot of overtime. But I mean, I'd moved out, long moved out, but I'd done a lot from my parents, so I'd done a lot of overtime, had a bit spare cash, and thought to myself, you know what, I fancy buying like a fancy bike, a flashy like road bike. So I went into Cycle World in Sunderland and bumped into someone who's like one of my best mates now, like Rocker, and he was asking about like what I was buying the bike for, just a bit cycling, and then he just started saying like, oh, have you never thought about triathlon? And I was like, well, I've seen an advert for the Sun City triathlon. He kind of, I like the look of it, but nah, not really. Like, and then, but he's like, I don't know if it was a Jedi mind trick or whether it was just him being like enthusiastic. Like I said, if you sat here and start talking about like carpet bowls with like, oh, it's mint, like it's really nice community, like everyone has a laugh, and then before we have a laugh, we'll play bowls, and then after it's, if you were playing to need, I would go, I'll come, I'll have a gun. That sounds mint. So if you, like anyone who speaks enthusiasm, within reason, like somebody says, I like murdering people or something like that, I'd be like, nah, you can have that yourself. But he was like that, like he's dead sociable, he's dead chatty, and he made it sound like it was doable. Whereas if somebody had said to us in a different way, do you think you would do a triathlon? I'd be like, no, because it's kind of hard triathlon. Like, but he made it accessible with his enthusiasm, and whether that was deliberate, I don't think so. I think that's just how he is. And he says like, well, come along to the training session. So I went along the training session, and it was up behind Dalton Park Shopping Centre on a Wednesday night. Still, that session still happens now. Went up. My bike hadn't come back then, so I was on the bike that I had, which was like, God knows how much it weighed, but it was a hybrid bike. I had a pair of red footy shorts that I've still got now. I had this top on that I've still got now. And I just went, and like I turned up, and there was a couple of older people, a couple of people who you might think, God, they're triathletes, but most of the rest of the people are kind of skinny and had like fancy bikes, and I was like, wow, this is a bit much. But then those people who look really intense and they've got God knows how expensive the bikes are, were so friendly and welcoming on that day. And he's this bloke who's rocked up with a hybrid bike and a pair of running shorts, and I didn't feel like a bloke who just rocked up to a triathlon session with an unsuitable bike and the wrong clothing. I just immediately felt like these people are mint, like, and then got on with it, huffed and puffed, and we biked 10 miles and ran 2 mile, and I like got the end of it, and I was at once dying on my arse and at the same time thinking, I can't wait for next Wednesday. I was like, that was class.
Got you
And
hooked.
everyone was like, yeah, well done. And everyone was congratulating each other. And just like that community that was there was like, oh, this is, I'll come back next week. It wasn't like, I didn't think to myself, my life has changed in this moment. This is it. It was just like, oh, this is good. This, like, I'm going to come back next week, and went back the next week. And then it kind of, if you'd said to us then, this is going to completely change your life and your life, and I've said this before, almost everything positive in my life now gets traced back to taking up triathlon. And the list is as like, things are getting all right now. The job I've got, the partner I've got, the hobby that I've got, the hobby that's also like one of the foundations of me continually good mental health, the like where I live, the qualifications that I've managed to get. Ice guys came from triathlon, open water swimming. That's how I ended up getting in the water. So that came from that, and it's just, it's weird. And if you'd said to us then, in nearly 10 years' time, you'll have managed to do all this. You'll have done these races. You'll have done Ironman races. You'll have met this person. This is what your life's gonna look like. I'd have been like, fuck off, mate. I just want to ride up and down the road, man. You're just talking like.
It's just mad because you're saying, you know, you meet Rocker in the bike shop, and that path, that moment has changed your life. What happens if you never met him and all that kind of thing?
Like a sliding doors moment, like total, like.
Completely is.
And I've thanked him, like every time, like setting up like NXY and putting on races for beginners, getting a qualification as a triathlon coach, doing ice guys, doing the races that I've done, getting the job I'm doing now gave us the qualification so I could even apply for that job. I've like sent him, dropped him messages like, just thanks for that, dear. And he always goes, no, you've done all that, like, and I'm like, but you lit the spark, you set that off. And if he hadn't been, if I just walked in and he'd gone, yeah, I've got these bikes, and I bought a bike and then went, well, would any of it happen? Maybe not. And yes, it's been organic, and yes, I've put effort in, but he deserves them messages and he deserves that thanks, like, and I'll probably thank him again before we both did. But
I mean, we could talk for another 2 hours about what you've achieved and what you're doing. Like, it is phenomenal, Chris. But let's go through. Let's bullet point this list of what you're doing and what you're involved in, of your clubs, NXY. Let's go through Ice Guys. Let's just go through, do the list and what these are.
So I guess the triathlon stuff. So joined Sun City Tri Club. Got more involved in, like, as my personality will dictate, I like kind of like quite sociable in them settings, and got more involved in the club. Got asked, I remember a guy called Simon Reynolds, who's another friend of mine, he says, like, do you ever fancy coaching? And my answer then was like, no, not really. No, I quite like sort of just coming along and being a club member. But then I became the welfare officer, actually, because I was a union rep. It kind of tied in a little bit. Then when we needed some coaches, I kind of like, all right, the opportunity, the club says, look, we need a couple of coaches. We're going to pay you through your coaching. So it was like, there's an opportunity. So just take it and see how it can. So I started coaching. Eventually, like now I'm level 2 British triathlon coach, and got stuck into that. And like, in the same way, it's not too dissimilar to saying to somebody who isn't in the union, would you like to become a member? And these are the reasons why it's advantageous to be a member. It's not too dissimilar to saying to somebody, would you like to become a triathlete? Here's the list of reasons why you should, like, it's advantageous to be a triathlete, or at least do some exercise. So I kind of found me niche a little bit in people who were slightly interested in a bit of physical exercise, but just encouraging them on and like just shoving them in the right direction to get them going, and certainly beginner sessions and coaching things I love doing that.
Is NXY part of that as well, Chris?
And where NXY came from, actually, it was so down Roker Beach where we tended to swim. I joined Roker Bathing Club because triathletes are like summer swimmers, so we'll be in our wetsuits through the summer, and then as soon as like late September, early October comes around, it's freezing. To us, it's freezing cold, so we kind of put our wetsuits away and wait for May to come around the following year. But my friend Kevin Petrie, he'd found Roker Bathing Club, and he says, "Oh, these swim like all year round." And the mate was like, "Didn't fancy that. Like, you fancy coming down?" And he wanted a date, so I was like, "I tell you what, I'll come down." So went down on the Sunday morning, and we went down and put our wetsuits on, and these lunatics like without wetsuits. Like, are they getting in without the wetsuit? So we still did our wetsuit thing for a couple of weeks, and then he was like, "Shall we get in next week without our wetsuit?" And I was like, my immediate reaction was like, "Well, no, we shouldn't," but because somebody else was doing it, I thought, well, we'll give it a go, and they seemed to enjoy it, so we ended up getting in without our wetsuits on, and that. So down Roker, there's a coffee shop called Fausto, and the owner of Fausto, Louise, said, "Do you think we could do our own triathlon down here, like a little one for beginners?" And I was like, "Right, maybe." And then when I asked, somebody else said, "If you contact British Triathlon, they've got an initiative called Go Try. They'll help you put something on." So contact British Triathlon, and they kind of came back and says, "I will send you a bag of stuff, and this is how you do it." And so we set up that race and organised this race for beginners, like really short distances. And apart from training to be a union rep, and sometimes when that got a bit difficult, organising that first race was the most stressful thing I'd done since walking into the GPs and it's like saying like, "I'm full of cork and I need help," because it was like, one, I had to write a risk assessment. Two, I had to like liaise with different people and plan the route and do everything, and it was so much good hassle that by the end of it, I was just completely exhausted. But I was sat just outside of Fausto, sat there and thinking on the day and everything. Everyone, like, people had gone home and some people hanging around and that, and I was fucking meant that, like. And then it was Louise that actually said to us, like, "Why don't you make it your job doing stuff like this?" And again, like, that kind of lit the fuse and thought, well, maybe I could. And that's where NXY Multisports came from, and carried on, done a bit coaching, done a bit paid coaching through British Triathlon. Did the qualification at level 2, so then I had the insurance to charge people for coaching. Didn't for a couple of years, but I've done earned a bit money with coaching. Nothing major, and it's very time consuming, so I don't do too much of that. But did more beginners races, Go Try races, and really, like, the buzz of watching people across the finish line after doing their first triathlon is almost as good as like when I've crossed like if I've moved up a level, like a distance, like crossing like Ironman finish lines was like, the first one was like amazing, broke down in tears. And but that first race, and then watching people come over and seeing in them, because I've never actually been that side of the line, it's always been me heading for the line, and being on that side of the line and knowing some of the people who, and the amount of effort that they had put into training for what some people think, well, they're only doing like a little bit, still a triathlon. And to some people, it's as daunting for them to do a short triathlon as it is for someone to step up and do an Ironman triathlon. And watching people cross the finish line, I was so choked. It was like, was worth all the hassle to just watch people, like, give them the medal and just watch them looking at their medal in the same way that I've seen, or I've experienced looking at the medals that I've managed to get, just like for finishing races. So that was like a massive thing, a massive buzz, and so that's NXY. So that's my own personal limited company.
And you've got Ice Guys as well, haven't you?
Ice Guys is so NXY is quite quiet now. It's still going. It's still a little bit of a thing, but it's off in the background because certainly Ice Guys is has taken over because I've only got so much time in the week. So where Ice Guys came from was the cold water dipping were carried on with Roker Bathing Club and carried on for a couple of years. And then my friend Haley set up Wild Sea Women, which was an all-women bathing group. So they would get in the cold water therapy from the bathing, and they had set up. And after a couple of weeks, some of their partners were asking if there was a male equivalent to Wild Sea Women. And at the time, there wasn't. So she just basically said to me, like, do you want to set up a men's group? And it was like, so I looked at them and I thought, looks kind of like, so always very honest to say that we just copied off the lasses. Like when it comes to Ice Guys, it wasn't, I didn't sit down and think what Sunderland needs is its own men's mental health organisation that dips in the sea. It was like, it looked canny. So we did it for lads and set that up in June 2020, in between the lockdowns. And it's carried on from there really, and it's built up and built up into this thing. And it was actually, it wasn't a community interest company. We didn't set it up as that. We just set it up as a group where blokes can go down, have a bit crack, and get in the sea. And essentially, that's still what it is, even though it's a community interest company. The dips, which is the kind of the central thing to what we do, is free. Any bloke can just come down, join in. They don't even have to get in the sea, actually. They can just come, have a bit social time with other men. And then if they want to get in the sea, they can get in the sea, and then we get out. And it, I think it was a year later when somebody had mentioned again to Haley and Wild Sea Women, have you ever thought about becoming a community interest company? Because you can access funding, which then you can expand on what you do. And if you want to do, you can kind of, it's called, you're kind of halfway between a charity and a business. It's you've got to run it for profit. You're meant to make profit, but what you can't do is, you could pay yourself a wage out of the money that you make or the funding that you get. But what you can't do is, like, if I wanted to buy, if we got loads of funding, which we haven't, we've got a bit of funding, but say if we got like £500,000, I couldn't justifiably go and buy a Ferrari with some of that money, or even the money that we made from the things that we do. If we made an astronomical amount of money, I can't spend it on anything that doesn't fall in the remit of improving men's mental health, which is what the community interest company of Ice Guys is. That's our ethos, our reason for being a community interest company.
I'm guessing you wouldn't spend it on a Ferrari anyway, Chris, would you? You'd kind of put it all into helping other people.
I might buy a triathlon bike. People are always joking on like that. Like when we did get our first funding, like back end of last year, we ended up with like 10 grand. Like we got 2 funding pots that like came through for us, and we ended up with 10 grand, and everyone was joking on saying, well, when you're going to get the triathlon bike? And I was just like, I said, if we get 100 grand, I could probably hide a triathlon bike amongst that. That's a joke, by the way.
But yeah, you can get the Ice Guys.
Or if I bought a load of triathlon bikes with Ice Guys logos on, I might be able to use one. But
it's kind of grown now, though, hasn't it? Ice Guys, you're kind of doing lots of different things within that, from starting from like just a cold water therapy group, and it's sort of certainly helping build a community of men to manage their mental health, which is how I'd describe it as, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I mean, we always say we're not we're not a professional mental health service. Far from it. We approach what we do with our attempt to help men's mental health quite irreverently. It's shot through with humour. We're kind of relaxed about what we do. We're not super serious, but we do understand that men's mental health is an extremely serious subject. What we do, we kind of provide things in a relaxed way, whether it's the dip in the sea, whether it's like recently we did a jiu-jitsu course, we're going to do guitar lessons next, like course of guitar lessons and things like that. What we're trying to provide are outlets for men that like form or can be one of the foundations that men have to handle their mental health. Somebody with serious mental health problems can't come to Ice Guys and say, I'm going to come to Ice Guys, and then in 2 years' time, by going to Ice Guys, I'll be able to have a handle on my mental health. If somebody came with serious mental health problems, we just signpost them to the NHS, but also saying, look, part of that, come down to the dip on a Sunday, come and do this with us. We understand our place, is what I'm trying to say, and our place is to provide an outlet for men that can be part of their approach to managing the mental health.
I think that's why it's grown, and that's why it's that's why blokes enjoy coming down, because you just feel comfortable around it, and other people, like-minded people, you just get each other, you know.
Yeah, totally.
There's no pressure and all, you know.
The kind of proudest moment I've had at Ice Guys is when I haven't been there. And to explain that, it's like at the start, I guess we only had the Sunderland dip, so we've got Tyneside, Ayrshire and Northumberland as well. So we've got 4 dips that men can attend. I'm generally down at Sunderland, but when we just had Sunderland, I was kind of front and centre, I guess. And like, if somebody new came, I'd be like, oh, well, I'm Chris. They've generally messaged or emailed or whatever through social media, and I'm like, oh, it's me, you've been taught new, and welcome, Nice Guys. This is what we do, blah, blah, blah. And there's been the first time I wasn't there and somebody new came, they messaged me later in the day and said, oh, I had a great time. The lads were mint. And I was like, that's it. That's, to me, I've succeeded with Ice Guys, because I don't need to be there. I can, and like funders have asked about it, and like what's your ambition for Ice Guys? And like, it kind of makes us a bit sick in my mouth when people ask us that, and like when they're talking about like, oh, how do you want to grow? How do you want the business to grow? And I'm like, if it doesn't grow anymore, I don't give a shit. Like, and the first time I like struggled badly with the idea of running it as a business, somebody says, well, like, what you've got to do is like, the aim is to monetize Ice Guys. And I just went, nah. And I was like, nah. And he was like, look, let us explain that. But now I get what they meant. They were a business advisor, but what they meant is like, bring money in to the point where you can carry on doing what you're doing now, and maybe offering more to what you're doing. It wasn't about like, because to me, that phrase was like, how can we rip people off to make money?
You don't want to sell out, because you want to keep the ethos of what Ice Guys is.
It's not gladly. I mean, we sell a bit merch, and we'll put sessions on, and sometimes we'll might make a little bit money here and there. But if we can tick over, that's what I was saying. Like, my measure of success is, if I'm not here, say if the worst comes to the worst and I died, would Ice Guys carry on? And even as I'm saying this sounds as dramatic as anything, but would it carry on? Yeah, it would. Because there's people in place now that might not be a community interest company, or somebody might look at it and go, I don't want to, I haven't got the time to put into running that as a community interest company, doing everything else. But would the dip still happen? Would that community still be there? I think it would, and for me, that's good enough. So anything that we do now going forwards is just in addition to, I feel like I've clocked the game, so to speak, as far as Ice Guys goes, and I'm over the moon that I can say that. And I know it might sound weird to say, like, I'm pleased that it'll carry on, or it went fine with me not being there. It'll go fine with me not being there. But for me, if somebody sets out to like build something in the community, then it needs to carry on if that person isn't there. Or what really have you built? You've built you rather than a community, and it doesn't need me. So when I got that message saying, oh, the lads were great and everyone was great, I was like, that's class, that, like.
And just want to sign off on just a last message I kind of ask people as well. Somebody out there who maybe is in a similar situation that you've been in before, Chris, just a message to them, from you.
This is something that because there's a lot of lads who come to Ice Guys are in recovery, whether it's gambling, addiction, alcohol, drugs, or they've just had really bad times in their personal lives and they're really like struggling. And I guess everybody who's recovered has recovered because they've put their hand up and admitted that they've got a problem and they need help. And talked about this before, and like whenever I hear about somebody committing suicide, whether it's a man or whether it's a woman or whether it's anybody, whoever it is, like how lonely they must have felt at that moment of deciding to do it, because they must have thought like there's no hope, there's no chance of like getting out of this. And if you speak to everybody, whether it's me or whether it's lads or men and women who have been in far more extreme circumstances than I ever was, the fact that they've put their hand up and says I need help is the moment that they started to get help, and they started that road to recovery. It might be a long road, it might be up and down, but so my message to people who are struggling is like, just ask for help. You'd be amazed at the amount of people who would help you. And so like the thought that somebody sat there and thinking to themselves is, no one will help us, there's no hope, there's I'm going to commit suicide and there's no point in carrying on. Well, there's so much point in carrying on. You can get help. Cannot imagine that the percentage of people who can't be helped to a better place is very high. You know, there'll be some people who there's no help for, but the majority of people, by just saying, look, I'm struggling here, sending out a message. I've seen it happen, like in the Ice Guys WhatsApp, a couple of lads have like almost like, a couple of them like almost sent like signing off messages saying, oh, it's been good. The kind of sort of reaction to that was like, shit, like, are you all right? People ringing their family or contacting people on Facebook with mutual friends, and how much people care is a lot greater than some people think in their moments when they're like feeling really, really low. And I mean, to an extreme degree, whenever somebody like stands on Weymouth Bridge or the Tyne Bridge, or began to climb over the railings, the amount of people that just stop, the amount of people that go up and just say like, don't do it, or they'll help them and they'll come and help them and say like, this, you don't need to do this, there is help out there. And just like, so if you're struggling, just go and ask for help. Doesn't have to be people who you know. You can ask your GP, can ring a helpline or the Samaritans, or just ask for help, and you'd be amazed at the amount of people that help. And I guess if somebody's like their family and things like that, like if they just said like, look, I'm feeling low, if in the extreme circumstances I feel like committing suicide, the reaction that they'll get is like love. And I guess that's it really. Like, it's just, there's so much evidence to say when you ask for help, you get it. That why would you not? So do that. Come to something like Ice Guys. There's loads now. There's loads of stuff out there. There's loads of people. Like in me work I do now, like I go to different community organisations, and I thought there was a lot of people doing stuff in Sunderland anyway, but the amount of people who are out there, whether they're volunteers or working for organisations, that their only thing that they want to do is help people feel better. It's amazing how much help's out there, and there's no shame in asking that. Everybody struggled to one degree or another, and even if people don't like admitting like that they've got help from other people, it might just be a case of getting somewhere and being around people, so those people have indirectly helped you. And some people who give it the big end of like, I can do this by myself or anything like that, like in some small way or another, like that they get helped. But again, excuse me, my experience of people asking for help is you'll get help. Might be a long road, and it might mean a few changes, it might mean some difficult times, but you don't have to go through them on your own. So ask.